Okay, perfect. So welcome to day 3 of Eco Week 2024, and today's session is Ireland's energy transition with SEAI. So just quickly, my name is Antonia and I am the Young Environmentalist Awards Project Officer, and I'll be your host today. So if you guys had joined us for any of the older sessions, you will have already seen me this week, but you'll see me for the rest of the week. And I'm going to talk to you a tiny bit about ECO-UNESCO before we get into the session. So firstly, ECO-UNESCO was founded in 1986 by a group of young people, and our aim is to empower young people who are involved with us to help protect the environment. ECO-UNESCO is proud to be one of UNESCO's affiliated clubs and a Sustainable Development Goals ambassador. So our Eco Week this year links in really well because it's Sustainable Development Goals Week as well. So we're trying to get you guys to think about all of those Sustainable Development Goals. As well, while you're here, if you guys could just let me know where you're tuning in from, so where in Ireland, and apologies, and how many of you guys are participating in today's event, so we can just get a quick number. So moving on quickly, today we are going to be talking all things about Ireland's energy transition. So that is SDG 7. So you guys on my screen today can see all the 17 SDGs. So this one links in with affordable and clean energy. So before I talk anymore, I'm going to introduce Una here. So Una works with SEAI and she's going to take over for me in 1 second. So basically we're going to explore how Ireland is shifting to cleaner renewable energy sources and why it's important for our future. So the floor is all yours, Una.
Thanks, Antonia. Okay, so I'm just going to here. Okay, are we good here now? Just click on and see that that's working.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so I work for SEAI, Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. Hopefully some of you have heard of us, but I know when I ask this question, I usually get a lot of blank faces. So just to kind of explain, SEAI is a government body charged with kind of making Ireland's energy sustainable. So I suppose, first of all, we're going to look at, well, what do we mean by sustainable energy? What is our sustainable energy? We'll obviously look at the link between our energy use and climate change, which is another one of the climate action, another one of the SDG goals. We have energy use in Ireland. We're going to look at where our energy currently comes from and where we need to be, and kind of the targets that we have for the future. In just under that, we have our non-renewable energy and our renewable energy forms, and kind of putting it together as in what can we do, and that will kind of come into the whole area of saving energy. So I suppose to start with the basics, some of you, depending on what level you're at, some of you will have already covered energy. Some of you, if you're first years or whatever, you may not have covered this yet. But I suppose some of the things that you will learn about energy. So what is energy? Energy is the ability to do work. So anything that moves or anything that works in any way needs energy. So it is vital to everything, really. And energy cannot be created or destroyed, but can only be converted from one form to another. So a lot of this conversion of energy from one form to another, this is kind of the basics for looking at what we mean by sustainable energy and how we can make our energy more sustainable. So just a simple example. All of our energy on Earth comes from the sun, and we get two forms of energy from the sun. We get light energy and heat energy. Now, light energy from the sun is taken up by plants, trees and plants, and converted to chemical energy through the process of photosynthesis. So we have conversion from light energy to chemical energy. Now that chemical energy is used by the tree to grow, and also in some cases the tree produces fruit. So we have the berries here, which are then a source of chemical energy. Berries are eaten by a bird, so the bird has the food, the bird's fuel, and the bird then converts that energy in its body to a number of forms, and one of those is kinetic energy, so it can fly away. Now, when we think about these energy conversions, and some of you have been studying energy will have learned all about Sankey diagrams and that some of our forms are, when we convert energy, some of those forms are useful forms that allows us to, the type of energy that we actually want, and some are non-useful forms. So and we'll come back to that idea later. But everything, so if we want to power something, then we need energy, and we see, well, where does that energy come from? It has to come from somewhere. We can't just get it out of nowhere. So we have to think about, where is that energy coming from, and how much of that energy is useful energy. So what then do we mean by sustainable energy? So a lot of people would say, well, sustainable energy is renewable energy, and that is part of it, but it's not the full thing. Because to be truly sustainable, our energy needs to be lasting. We need to be able to continue to use energy, but we need to do that in a way that doesn't affect future generations, doesn't negatively impact on our own lives, and doesn't negatively impact on people in other countries and other parts of the world as well. And also the plants and the animals that we share our world with. So we have to consider all of these factors if something is to be truly sustainable. Just some quotes from the SEAI website. So our mission is to be part of delivering Ireland's energy revolution. So we do need to change the way we generate and use our energy. We drive the reduction and replacement of fossil fuel usage, knowledge-led organization. So it's all about the knowledge and, well, what do we know about our energy use? How can we use that knowledge to bring about change so that our energy is more sustainable? And SEAI is really a partnership. So we partner with citizens, communities, businesses, and government. So we kind of work with other government departments, but also with people, just homeowners, business owners, communities, schools, so we educate as well as kind of funding research as well, and providing grants. So why sustainable energy? So sustainable energy improves people's lives. So it's all about bringing comfort and convenience and addressing environmental challenges. It's beneficial to our economy because with all of the changes that need to come, there are jobs in kind of bringing that transition. And we want to help all of society to be more energy efficient and support the development of clean energy technologies. So it comes down to three main areas, really. So if we want energy to be sustainable, first of all, we think about where our energy comes from. So at the moment, most of our energy is still coming from the burning of fossil fuels. So we need to switch away from the burning of fossil fuels towards more renewable energy sources. So that's one area, so where the energy comes from. The next is how well we use the energy that we've got. So how efficient we can be with our energy use. So I'm sure if you look at appliances in your homes, or even in the home economics room and stuff, you'll see, your fridges, your washing machines, all of these have an energy rating on them. And that tells us how much energy it uses. So if you find something that's, say, a G rating, it's going to use a lot of energy every time it's turned on. So say, picking the example of the washing machine there, it's going to, it's going to wash the clothes, but it's going to use a lot of energy in the process. If you have one that's an A rating, it's going to wash the clothes the same way, but it'll use a lot less energy in the process. And part of that is because the technology has improved, so there's less wasted energy or dissipated energy, and more of the input, more of the energy that's going in is going towards actually washing the clothes and not kind of excess noise and things like this. Similarly with light bulbs, I'll come back to the light later. The bulbs themselves have become more efficient. So we put in less energy, but we get the same amount of light at the end. We can also be more efficient with our homes. And one of the things, if I ask an adult group, have you heard of SEAI? The thing that most people will talk about is grants. So if you want to upgrade your home to make it more energy efficient, mainly through insulation, then you can apply for a grant from SEAI to help with some of that cost. And the idea of that is, when we're heating our homes, in most cases, most people are still burning fuel, some sort of fuel, usually oil or gas, to heat their homes. If the house is not well insulated, most of that heat will actually escape through the walls and the ceiling and all those. So you end up having to burn more and more fuel to keep your house warm. If the house is well insulated, it's more efficient. We burn less fuel, but we get the same amount of comfort in the house, or even more sometimes. So there are two areas. So I suppose the renewable energy is mostly, that's kind of a government responsibility, really. It's a whole country approach. Well, although people can, individually, solar panels would be an example, of people maybe employing renewable technologies in their own houses. But mostly that's a kind of the efficiency then is more of an industry thing. So again, you can apply to have your house, you can have your house insulated and all that, but the technologies and all that comes down to industry and innovation. The main thing that we have direct control of, especially yourselves, is the behavior change. And this is as important, if not more important, than the other two. And that's all of the things. So energy is used everywhere. So it's not just in our electricity, it's the energy used in our transport, the energy used to produce our food, energy used to heat our homes, to clean and pump our water, to produce the things that we use, packaging and all these things. And so all of these things come down to, if we can change our behavior in these ways, if we can reduce, reuse, recycle, we save energy. If we reduce our electricity use, we save energy. If we can change our transport, if we can, walk or cycle more, use more public transport, fly less, we can reduce our transport. The food, we consider lots of different aspects to do with our food, which I'll touch on later as well. Heating, just simply things like, well, you may not have the whole house insulated, simply things like closing doors and windows, closing curtains. That can save energy on heating. Saving water by not wasting it, and also then protecting the natural environments that can actually help to mitigate some of the damage from our energy use. So I suppose it all comes down to energy, our energy use, and all of these things. It all comes down to climate change. So there's a lot of terms related to climate change, and sometimes we use them and use them interchangeably, and sometimes we don't actually fully understand what we're talking about, or what we what we mean by the various terms. So what is climate change? So first of all, we talk about greenhouse gases. Now, greenhouse gases, if we look at the picture of the Earth there, and we have a kind of a border there representing our atmosphere. So our atmosphere is made up of a number of gases. And greenhouse gases, some of those gases are called greenhouse gases because they act like the glass in a greenhouse, and they help to trap some of the sun's energy. So energy coming in from the sun will hit the Earth. If we didn't have the greenhouse gases, all of that heat energy would kind of go straight out, back out to space, and we wouldn't be able to survive on our planet. So now, greenhouse gases, I'm going to come back to this one. There's what we call global warming potential. So greenhouse gases are given this number, a relative number, based on how much heat they actually trap. Some greenhouse gases trap more heat than others. So when we talk about carbon emissions, really, this is the greenhouse gases that we are responsible. So there's a certain amount of these greenhouse gases are naturally part of our atmosphere. And then there are some that we emit through our human activities, and those are our carbon emissions. Now, the main greenhouse gas we talk about is carbon dioxide. But when we talk about carbon emissions, we also kind of include those other greenhouse gases, and I'll explain how we do that. This all leads to the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse gases, the effect of those greenhouse gases trapping the energy from the sun and holding it around the Earth is called the greenhouse effect. Now, the greenhouse effect in itself is not a bad thing. That's what allows us to live on our planet. But what the issue is, when we burn fossil fuels and other human activities, we release extra greenhouse gases and enhance the greenhouse effect. And that's what we call global warming. Now, this figure, 1.5 degrees of warming that people talk about all the time, what does that actually mean? And what that actually means is that if we take an average temperature, so the average daily temperature for every country in the world, averaged out over a full year, that gives us our average temperature for that country. We then average that out with the average daily temperature for all the other countries in the world, and that we get our average yearly global temperature. Now, that's the figure that is increasing. And we started to measure this from the time when we started really burning fossil fuels on a big scale, was the Industrial Revolution. So what we're talking about is 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And contrary to what you see some people talking about, we haven't changed our mind and said it's not global warming anymore, it's climate change. Global warming causes climate change. So global warming is an average increase in the temperature of the Earth, which then leads to lots of effects. So when we add extra heat into the atmosphere, we change how the atmosphere moves, and we change our long-term weather patterns. So global warming can lead to increased heat in certain cases, increased, cold in other cases, like so it can lead to extreme cold events. It can lead to flooding and drought and all the things in between. So global warming causes lots of effects, not just warming. It's an average warming of the surface temperature of the Earth, but that leads to lots of different consequences. Sure, you're all familiar with them. Some of the consequences of climate change. So flooding, these are all ones from Ireland. We get, a lot less than of the impact than other countries do. You can see, floods devastating Europe at the moment, but we have, and some people say, well, Ireland always flooded. Yes, it always floods occasionally, but what happens is the extreme events are becoming more common. So there's always kind of, weather is different from climate. We can't say this is climate, whatever, but what we do see is the long-term patterns, and the long-term patterns are changing, so that we're getting more of these extreme rainfall events that can bring flooding, more, extreme heat. Again, people will laugh at this sometimes, extreme heat in Ireland, but extreme heat in Ireland is heat that is above what we would normally expect. And we have had droughts and that because of that. Extreme cold, snow events and all that, part of that as well. Wind is becoming a big issue, a lot more storms because the atmosphere is unstable, we get a lot more storms. This has an impact on biodiversity. So things like, changes in our long-term climate patterns can affect, number of species. It can affect migrations, the places that species can live in. And a big knock-on effect of all of this is a reduction in our ability to actually grow food. So in Ireland, I'm just going to stop sharing here and just go back in. I have stopped sharing there. Yeah, I'm just going to go into a new window here and just where's it gone? Yeah. Okay, so we have 5 very short animations. Now I would kind of normally intersperse these, but just because I have to go to the website for them, I'm just going to show them all to you in one go, and then we'll go back and kind of relate them to some other stuff.
Are you ready for another doom and gloom video about climate change? Sorry to disappoint, this is not it. There's a lot being done to tackle climate change, and loads more that you and I can do. We can start by talking to the people who can make a difference. Remind them of the big climate statistics that we already know. Like, nearly half of all Irish energy comes from oil, and that we import 80% of the energy we use. Ireland can put more work and effort in clean energy generation, can't we? Because climate change affects us all. We can do better.
Okay, so 80% of the energy we use is actually imported. So if we can kind of increase the amount of renewable energies we use, then we can actually cut down on that figure. We can become more self-sufficient. That gives us better control over prices of energy and all of that as well. So there's multiple benefits from changing our energy. Now, our energy use and other things we lead to emissions of greenhouse gases, which I've already kind of touched on. So I'm just going to show you this one here. It's about our emissions from greenhouse gases.
Real climate change champions care about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But who and what are our biggest emitters? First up is farming and agriculture. With nearly 7 million cows and 6 million sheep, all those birds add up to a lot of greenhouse gas. In second place is transport. Over 95% of the energy that powers our cars, buses, and trains still comes from oil, and that gives off a lot of CO2. And finally, dirty electricity generation is number 3. We still use a lot of gas, coal, and oil to generate Ireland's electricity, and all that fossil fuel creates even more CO2. In our homes and schools, only about 40% of the electricity we use is renewable. Let's have a clean fight for a clean future.
Okay, so that was kind of the biggest emitter. So kind of agriculture with the top emissions, followed by transport, and then our electricity generation. So what are we doing about that? What we need to do is we need to reduce those emissions. So we have targets that we are supposed to meet by 2030 on reducing our emissions. So.
Let's speed things up a little. By 2030, Ireland and all EU countries has a target to reduce its carbon emissions by 51%. We need to see 75% less emissions from electricity, 50% less from transport, and 25% less from agriculture. It's coming in 2030, and it's the law. We've started cutting down emissions slowly, but now it's time to accelerate. Ask the people in power to keep their word and drive our sustainable future today.
Okay, so on that kind of the reducing the emissions, we have something called carbon budgets. So sometimes when we say we have a target by 2030, people see that, oh, well, we don't need to do anything until 2030. But this kind of animation just helps to explain a little bit about what that actually means in terms of our reductions of the budget.
Imagine you had €10 to last you the week, but you spent €9 on Monday. Not a good idea to spend most of your money in one day, right? But that's a little like what's happening in Ireland now with our carbon budgets. We have a limit for how much CO2 we can emit every 5 years, and we're eating into that budget more quickly than we should. We need to reduce our emissions big time to get back on track. That means getting more energy from sources that don't emit CO2. More wind turbines, solar panels, and biofuels. It also means using less fuel and electricity. Let's help Ireland and the Earth.
Okay, and final one then is about our contribution. So sometimes people say, you know, Ireland is a small country, what can we do? And, you know, what's the role of individuals?
Real change starts small.
Sorry.
When it comes to climate change, even small acts can make a big difference. When all of us take climate action seriously, the world can change. Even people like you and me, our families and friends, our neighbours, and everyone in our communities. When we come together, we can do something really impactful. Like when Ireland led the way by being the first country to ban plastic bags, or stop new licenses for oil and gas companies to explore in Irish waters. Today, half of the world's greenhouse gas emissions come from small countries. If we keep our promises in Ireland, our small country can inspire bigger changes across the globe.
Okay, so a bit of a whirlwind tour there. So I'm just going to get onto what can we actually do then about it. So. Okay, so we've seen those animations, and those animations, like I said, I showed them to you all very quickly, but those are available on the SEAI website, so you can have go back and have a look on them and spend a bit more time kind of discussing each one as well. I'm just kind of, I suppose, giving you a quick introduction to what is available. Okay, so our fossil fuels. In Ireland, we are 4 fossil fuels that we use. So gas, used for heating our homes, small amount for well, cooking. And gas would be the main fossil fuel used for generation, or the main method of generating electricity in Ireland. So gas is burned in our power stations. Oil was coming offline. A lot of our oil-fired power stations had come offline, but then demand for electricity went up. So a small amount of our electricity is generated from burning oil in power stations. Small amount for cooking if you say you have an oil-fired range or something. Used a lot for heating our homes. And the main use of oil would be our transport. About 95% of our transport, cars, trucks, tractors, buses, planes, the whole lot comes from burning of oil. And then we have coal and turf or peat. And these would be used mostly for, say, open fires or stoves in houses. Sometimes would be the main source of heating in a house, but not that often. Maybe, again, if it's burned in a range, for cooking, and a small amount used for electricity generation. So we have been phasing out the use of oil, coal, and turf for electricity generation because they produce higher amounts of greenhouse gases, or what we get from them. So turf would be our highest emitter of greenhouse gases, followed by coal, and then oil and gas would be the lowest. So fossil fuels are non-renewable. Once they're burned, they can't be replaced. So all of these, most of them take hundreds of millions of years to form in the earth. Turf takes thousands of years. And once a bog has been drained for turf cutting, then it can no longer regenerate. So our biggest greenhouse gases. So I talked about the global warming potential of greenhouse gases. So this is just something I want to just go back on. So if you look at our overall energy use, agriculture is our biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, but it wouldn't be big on energy use. And that's because some greenhouse gases are more powerful than others. So if we look at the global warming potential of gases, this represents 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. This is 1 kilogram of methane produced from livestock, like from animals, and also from the rotting of waste as well, so organic waste. So if food waste and that is sent to landfill instead of being composted, it produces methane. And nitrous oxide would be produced from the use and the manufacture and use of artificial fertilizers. So 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide has a global warming potential of 1. It just traps a certain amount of heat in the atmosphere. Now, a kilogram of methane has a global warming potential of 25. So 1 kilogram of methane has the same impact in the atmosphere, same heat trapping impact as 25 kilograms of carbon dioxide. Nitrous oxide then, produced in much smaller amounts, but is an extremely powerful greenhouse gas, has a global warming potential of 298. So 1 kilogram of nitrous oxide has the same global warming potential as 298 kilograms of carbon dioxide. Okay, on our carbon emissions targets, one thing so just something you may not be aware of, if you take note of the URL there, you go onto this website and type in the school's roll number. So teachers will know the roll number. Students, you can Google your school's roll number, just put in the name of the school and roll number and you'll find it. Put it in there and you will get a breakdown of your school's energy use and emissions. And we all have targets to reach. Now I have two examples here. One is a school. Now this school are over there, have achieved their target and all nice and early. The reason for this is they got a full retrofit. So this is not a typical school. So you can see they're above or below the 50% target that they needed to reach by 2030. They've already achieved it and more. The amount of energy, total energy, they're a small rural primary school, the amount of energy absorbed, equivalent to the amount of energy absorbed by 58 trees. And this is their energy performance to date. Now you can see the figures only go up as far as 2021 because it takes a while for them to be uploaded and kind of calculated on the system. So you can see where they got their retrofit from. This is probably a more typical school. And they have actually increased their energy use, which doesn't look good, but there is a reason for this. So that's their total energy use. This is just some of the figures that you'll get on this. But you can see that they had actually a good reduction in their energy use. They were dropping right down, and then COVID hit, and we all had to open windows while the heat was on. So that's the reason there. If you would see their recent figures, I'm sure it would drop again. So that's just some of the data you can get from that. And I suppose the real change starts small. So we can all make a difference. And I just want to talk about some of the things. So just in terms of lighting, if you look at the emissions from electricity generation have gone down in Ireland. So I won't get too much into the graphs here, but you can see a general downward trend. So from electricity generation in Ireland, when we were burning a lot more coal and oil and peat, we were producing 896 grams of carbon dioxide for every unit of electricity generated in 1990. By 2022, that figure had dropped to 332 grams. So our electricity generation is getting much more efficient, and that's down to, you know, more renewables in the mix. The efficiency of our lights has improved. So an old 100-watt bulb gives the same light as a 25-watt CFL bulb or 12-watt LED bulb. So as the appliances become more efficient, we use less energy to produce them. But we also have to bring in the behavior change, and that's where we all come in. So use your lights only when needed, making use of natural daylight, lighting design, and then a little activity that you could try for yourselves is you can download a free light meter app on a phone, and you can actually tell how much light is hitting the surface in your bathroom. And the recommended level is 300 lux. So it's not just about, well, how can we save energy? You can actually calculate your savings as well. I know we want a few questions. I can come back to these, and if we don't have questions. Another thing we can look at is our transport. 17.7% of Ireland's greenhouse gases in 2021 came from transport, and 40% of that was private cars. So we can actually make a big difference to Ireland's transport energy emissions by looking at how we use cars and how often and when. So again, we can see in all of these figures, all of these graphs come from the SEAI website. So there's a huge amount of data that's available. If you want to kind of take on a project on reducing energy and all that, you can actually bring in this data and actually calculate the impact of your savings. Just the private. Carbon intensity. So just on the efficiency, cars have become much more efficient. So the engines are better, so they use a lot less energy. We've also, so the efficiency has improved, but if you look at our emissions, the emissions haven't actually gone down. And the reason for that is probably our journeys, looking on that graph, journeys probably didn't go up that much, but when the cars became more efficient, people then started buying bigger cars. So a lot of this comes down to, we can't just rely on, the renewable energies being developed in the country as a whole, and then the efficiency of the appliances and all that. We all have a big part to play, because if we buy bigger and bigger cars, then any of the impact, it's all being wiped out. So our emissions haven't changed at all, and that's down to our behavior. So behavior change is really important, and the data kind of shows you that. So things like how is a car powered? So we can look at that. Size of the car. We can look at long and short journeys. So could we cut the number of journeys we take? Could we carpool? I mean, there are more passengers when we do fewer cars. Speed of the car. A car going very slowly in traffic is going to burn a lot more fuel than a car on the open road. So simple things like getting out of the car, a little bit early and walking the last bit of the distance to school makes a massive impact. So it's not just about the always getting the car or not getting the car. It's about thinking about little considerations like that. And so think of a car. So that table I showed you, that shows the average CO2 emissions per kilometre. If you work out the kilometres you travel, you can actually calculate your emissions for a journey and then calculate how you can reduce your impact. So it's a way of just putting figures on things. And I know I've gone through that very, very quickly. Because I want to just get on to questions, and I can come back and touch on any of the points that I've run through very quickly. Agriculture as well. We're not all farmers, but we all eat food. So we can think about our food choices, and we can think about, the transport, the packaging, the type of food, all of these considerations, and we can reduce our impact that way. So the type of food, the food miles, seasonality, packaging, food waste. Okay, so sorry, very, very quick whirlwind. I'm going to stop there now. And I have stopped sharing, haven't I?
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. If anyone does have any questions, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself or pop it in the chat for Una. Also, in the meantime, if you guys have just tuned in, if you wouldn't mind sending in where you're viewing from and how many of you guys are viewing, that would be great to know. I might kick off a question anyway. What are the main challenges we face as Ireland moving towards a sustainable energy resources, use of sources, like?
Well, I suppose in terms of our energy mix, the big challenge would be the transport, because I mean, while we're doing really well with the electricity, and that's something we can continue to improve on, the heating as well. Like we're going to end up, if we're sort of electrifying a lot of our transport and then electrifying our heating and all that, that's going to be more electricity needed and all that. So the big challenge will be, and I think a lot of that comes down to the behavior change. Like we can't just constantly keep saying, oh, we're going to pump in more renewables and that'll solve everything. We do need to think about our use of energy as well, and kind of think, well, the big thing we need to cut is, if we need to cut transport, then we need to start thinking about cutting the amount of journeys, more public transport and all that, and then our own use of transport and the cars that we buy, the number of journeys we take and all that, because we're constantly going to be playing catch up if we try and electrify all our transport and electrify our heating without making those reductions.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest takeaway is behavior change. I think you can be provided with the resources, but it's people using those resources or taking it on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably bad for it as well sometimes. I'm living in Dublin, and the transport, it depends where you're going. So the transport sometimes just doesn't live up to it. So you might have to use a car.
Yeah.
If anyone does have any questions,
that's a mixture of the individual and we need to be provided with the means to be able to make those better choices as well. Yeah.
Another one is, I notice, is we got a question in from someone in a rural area, and I know there's a lot of signs against wind farms. Is there a reason, or is it just aesthetic? Is it?
I don't know. I think there are lots of reasons. Like, some people, sometimes that's, there are some reasons maybe justified, some are not, and a lot of it comes down to communication, and there needs to be, I think when we're putting in infrastructure like that, there needs to be good communication between the people putting it in and the people who are going to be living in the area and that as well. And a big, I suppose with the wind, a big movement now is going to be towards offshore wind. Like, so there probably will be less of, because you have, you're making better use of the resources. We have more wind offshore and all that, like, so, and you can build, bigger wind farms out. So that will kind of be the change in that. But I think in a lot of cases we're just figuring it out. We're just kind of saying, look, we have to do this. How are we going to do it in the right way? And
yeah, for sure. If there are any questions, let us know. But I'm just gonna share my screen and just do a couple of my own slides, if that's okay. Thank you so much, Una. Anyway. But yeah, if you have any questions, send them in, or I'm sure you can contact Una. Una, if you can get access to the chat, and if you want to pop in maybe an email address for yourself that people can get in contact with you straight away directly, or the best way to contact SEAI maybe potentially.
Yeah. I suppose, I mean, like, a huge amount of stuff on our SEAI website. And for schools and that, we do have, if you go onto the schools tab, you'll find the contact details there if you want to book workshops or anything like that. That's probably the best way, rather than I might not have all the answers individually, but if there are contact details for SEAI that pop up on our website. So that would be the best thing, is go there, look at what we've got, and look at all the different things that we provide for schools, and then kind of get in touch if you want to book workshops or you want to do anything like that.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. So just from myself, if you guys do want to get involved any further with the ECO-UNESCO, we have the Young Environmentalist Awards, which I'm a part of. And as Una mentioned, something maybe about even looking at trying to reduce the transportation or trying to reduce the emissions within your local area. That could be one really, really good eco-action project towards the Young Environmentalist Awards. And registration's closed for that in November. It's all free, so you can get involved as much as you want. Then we also have our workshops, so they are online or in person, and you can get in contact with our workshops team. So that is bookings@eco-unesco.ie. And then we also have our youth groups, so they're all free as well. It's free to get involved. So we have our climate justice program, and then also our youth for sustainable development program. So we have That's online or in person. The Sustainable Youth for Sustainable Development one is Maynooth, Galway, Drogheda and Dublin in person, but otherwise it's online. So it's a 12-week programme as well. So just if you guys want to get any further involved with regards to anything that's environmental. And then for yourselves, before you leave, I have pinned this in the chat, but if you could just provide us with any feedback, that'd be amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope to see you guys for maybe some of the rest of the sessions. So this is what we have coming up. And so today is midweek, so we're nearly there. But we have Thursday and Friday, and then our other session later on today. Oh, that's actually reads wrong. So we actually have Building Sustainable Communities on later on today. Amazing. If you guys do have any questions, do reach out to us. So the best way to contact us is info@eco-unesco.ie. And I hope you all have a great week. Thank you so much, Una. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.